Hi, my name's Tony Blauer. I grew up in the 60s watching, riveted to The Green Hornet, the Wild Wild West, the original one with Robert Conrad. And I was fascinated. Anytime I saw fighting in a movie or TV show, I was like glued to the set.
Pop and always reset. Look how I reset right back into my spear stance.
There was something about it. You couldn't distract me. The house could have been on fire. I was watching TV. It was a weird time in the 60s. I was born in 1960, and I don't know what it was, but I always had this tremendous amount of fear. And I never talked about it because, like, you're 6 years old, 7 years old. I would walk, I'd be at school, I'd be worried about, is this kid gonna attack me? Is someone gonna jump out from behind a locker bank? It was weird shit, and it never occurred to me that maybe other people had it or not, because you just didn't talk about it then. And I remember when I was getting ready to go to school, and I'd started wrestling, and I was really afraid, while I was wrestling, and I did well, but I was like terrified of losing, terrified of winning. I didn't understand. Years later, I would explain it to my students. I go, it's kind of this self-sabotage thing that, if I'm as good as my coach says I am, why am I so scared? Nobody back then understood anything about like performance psychology and mindset. They didn't talk about tachypsyche, auditory exclusion, tunnel vision, and so on and so forth. And so I was wrestling with this, and I felt like I had more fear than anyone in the world. And I remember saying to my dad when I was 11 or 12, hey, I'm going to high school next year, and I'm kind of like worried. What if something happens to me? He's like, what? Aren't there older kids and maybe they'll beat you up or something? And I remember him looking at me going, well, if you want to learn to defend yourself, you got to learn martial arts. And it was 1973. Bruce Lee had just passed away. Enter the Dragon wasn't even out yet. And a Taekwondo school opened up around the corner of my house. And I signed up right away. And I went in there and fell in love with it. I just fell in love with the discipline, the practice, the movements.
Left arm, finger splayed, left leg forward, pinky off, and then just drop it down just like a guillotine, let it fire.
I loved martial arts so much. I remember my instructor saying, if I catch any of you starting a fight, provoking a fight, you're kicked out, you're done. And I was always trying to find ways that the complex motor skills that I was learning, whether it was this takedown, this arm drag, this uppercut, this jab, this cross, this shin kick, how they would solve the problem. And I realized that that wasn't the answer. The answer was in discovering or understanding that the opponent controls the fight. And that was the biggest epiphany, the fancy word for light bulb moment for me. And in that moment, it was like the God of War fired this lightning bolt in my head, and I realized, holy shit, we teach self-defense wrong. We, meaning the world. If you think about what we do, we always, in our training, have this complex motor skill solution to a problem we've said, this is what's gonna happen. When the bad guy does a lapel grab, when the bad guy tackles you, when the bad guy gets you in a headlock, when the bad guy gets you in a choke. And all these years later, now I can explain what's wrong about that from a neuroscience point of view. And if you think about this really simply, that if I do my 10,000 hours, my 10,000 reps of how to get out of a headlock, I've always done one more rep letting myself get in a headlock. If I do 10,000 reps practicing weapon retention, and I practice pinning the gun and then smashing the radial nerve or grabbing the guy or whatever, I've always done one more rep letting the bad guy attack me. And I realized back then in reverse engineering self-defense that you can't do that. You need to practice much more pre-contact cue awareness and intercepting the attack. So Panther Productions signs me, and that was really how my system kicked off. They started running the ads in Black Belt Magazine beside Chuck Norris and Gene LaBelle and Paul Vunak and all those guys. I got invited to teach at karate college, became friends with Joe Louis and Bill Wallace and all those guys, hung out with Benny Riquides, and these guys were like, oh my God, I want their autograph, but I want to be cool. These were my heroes, right? They were much older than me. And I was doing my own thing. It was interesting, like at karate college, I showed up and I was teaching a pair of cutoff shorts and a tank top, and everyone's in their gis. And you know, I got people coming up to me going, hey, you're not fitting in, you're not fitting in. I'm going, man, I'm teaching street defense. I'm like, you know, we're in West Virginia. It's 100 degrees with 100% humidity. You're dying in your gi. In other words, it was interesting just to see even there that paradigm that I was the outsider, not on purpose to try and be controversial. It was like, I'm wearing a tank top and shorts because I'm outside in the sun and the heat. And you want to look like a martial artist. And that was kind of this interesting juxtaposition of where I was in the industry and where everyone else was. It was like, hey, this is how the style handles all these problems. And I was going, think about this shit. I think that the random violence that happens, that we could stymie that if people were taught how to manage fear, how to pick up danger, and how to move naturally. That we all know how to fight. We just don't know we know how to fight. What if learning to defend yourself was easier than we thought? Through osmosis, we think we need a black belt. We need to learn martial arts. We need to train. We need to have this experience. What if we just hacked into this 80,000-year-old DNA? Think about this. You can learn CPR from a paramedic or a firefighter in 6 hours. Does that make you a fucking doctor? Of course not. But you could save somebody's life. You could learn how to use a fire extinguisher in an hour and run scenarios. Does that make you a firefighter? No, but you could save your life, your family's life, your property. And people have confused. Imagine a firefighter coming into a fire extinguisher class going, look what you guys are doing. That's so stupid. Imagine a doctor coming into a first aid CPR clinic going, this is a joke. I was in school for 8 years working 2 jobs. You guys aren't brain surgeons. We couldn't even imagine that because it would be embarrassing. Well, that's the type of vitriol and opposition we get when I say you can learn how to defend yourself and your family in a day. What you can't do is jump in the octagon. What you can't do is go box. What you can't do is go grapple. But you could learn how to spot danger, move away from it. You could learn how to verbally diffuse it, and if push comes to shove, you can make the decision to protect yourself. And that's really the essence of what we've done. We've kind of, you know, as a metaphor, created the version of first aid for self-defense.